Molima, mute yourself. Okay.
So, sorry for that group. I guess we can now continue. Welcome. As we say that the group which was there in the morning, karibu, the ones who have joined us this afternoon, karibu sana. And I just want to say that in the morning, we had the first module, which was on the foundation of counseling. And I guess we just brainstormed kidogo about what we did. We looked at the introduction to counseling, what counseling is. And then we also looked at the counseling awareness. What is this? Yes. Sorry. This which we need to be aware about, especially when we are dealing with our clients. There are some of those awareness issues we talk. And by the way, this is where we say, before you go out there to help other people, it's good you be aware about yourself. You also look at how you, as an individual, you can even affect the other clients not even to open up. So there are some of those areas which we need to be aware about. Then we looked at some of the counseling skills. As we said, there are so many, but we managed to look at a few: active listening, maybe the issue of questioning, the issue of paraphrasing, the issue of nonverbal communication, among the others. We also looked at the counseling process. And as I said, counseling process is not just a one touch, that you go to a session, you are counseled and you are done. It's like you have to keep on going, maybe first session, second session, third session is when you start feeling something small, fourth session, depending on the issues you're going to present. I usually compare it as when you're going to the gym. You don't just go to the gym day 1, 2, 3, and you cut down your weight. You go like for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That is when you start seeing the difference. The same way with counseling. And then we looked some of the models which we use when you are helping the client. Those are the interventions. And we looked at some of the theories, which we are also going to look at again. We also looked at how we can be able to intervene, especially when we are dealing with the cognitive behavioral theory. And this is where in the morning I was giving the members an example, like when I told them this is the worst class I've ever had. And I told them that was not real. This was the best class. And we said that as you talk about that, what comes to your mind? That is the thoughts. How do those thoughts make you feel? How does it make you act? That is the behavior. So how they make you feel, those are the emotions. How they make you think, those are the thoughts. So in that process, that is under the cognitive. And we looked at how can we be able to restructure our cognitive way of thinking, to look at things in a positive way. We change our thoughts by being rational than being irrational. And remember, cognitives, they say it's us who makes a choice to be disturbed. So let's not make a choice to be disturbed. Then we also looked at the therapeutic alliance, some things we need to be aware about ourselves, which will make this therapy to be very helpful. Those are among the things we looked at. For the ones who have joined us today or this time, we are going to have this session up to around 4 o'clock. And then tomorrow we'll have module 3 from 9 to 12, and then module 4 from 1 to 4. So feel most welcome to this session. And now we are going to module 2, whereby we are going to look at the counseling psychology, where we talk about theory and practice, how we are supposed to be handling this. And under this, we have the course outline. Some areas we are going to look at, I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the major theories of counseling and psychotherapy. Then we are going to look at theory-based interventions and techniques or styles. Then we are going to look at the lifespan development. Then we are also going to look at those multicultural issues in counseling. And remember, we are dealing with people from different cultures. So maybe the way you do things from your own culture is not the same way we handle the issues here. So can you respect my culture? I also respect yours. And can you respect my beliefs? I also respect yours. Those are the ones we'll be looking at. Then we are also going to look at the ethical and professional issues in counseling. I remember in the morning, someone was asking, like when we are talking about the issue of confidentiality, how sure are we that maybe whatever the client is doing, we need not to infringe their rights? So we'll be able to look at those ethical, and these ethics, they tell us what we're supposed to be doing, whether it's right or wrong. So that is the course outline, which we'll be covering up to around 4 o'clock. So some of the major theories which we are going to look at, and this is what I was saying, we are just mentioning these theories. And under these theories, we have what we call the first force theory. And these are, when we are calling them major, because there are many of them, but we are picking the ones, like when we talk about psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, at times we call it psychoanalytical. This is the first force theory, which we look at, which it's originating from one of the psychologists who is called Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud is the father of psychology, is the one who came up with this analysis. And mostly for him, when he came up with this technique, by the way, he subjected himself to the same study which he was doing, and he tried to help clients. And for him, this theory, it mostly focuses on some of uncovering those unconscious materials. Like when we talk about using our 5 senses, I think we have the 6th one. When we are using all those ones, then how do we, sorry, there are some things you see and you tell yourself, you're not that one, it's not me. Where are you pushing it to? In psychology, we say we have the sensory memory, short-term memory, and then we have long-term memory, which Sigmund Freud calls the consciousness, the subconscious, and the unconsciousness. So in that, the consciousness is something which you just see. You can maybe even hear. You can even maybe hear what people are saying, and then you tell yourself, this one, it can stick in your mind, whereby it goes to the subconscious. Then from subconscious, we push it, it goes to the unconscious level. And this is what motivates us to behave the way we are behaving. So out here, what we'll be seeing, they're just symptoms. But which are these issues which we have repressed to the unconsciousness? Even us, at times, we are not aware. And that is why I was telling you, there are some people, even who can remember things which happened to them, depending with the age, like some years back, whether it is 5 years, whether it's 10 years, 20, 30, even 50 years, people can still remember. So where was that information? That information was in the unconsciousness. So we want to see, that is one of his key concepts on how you can be able to make the materials which are in the unconsciousness. That is the one he's talking about, uncovering unconscious motivations or materials to come to the consciousness, to come to your awareness, so that you can be able to be aware which are these issues which we have repressed to the unconsciousness. And I know we have so much. And when you look at that iceberg, the one I was talking about, the iceberg, whereby we have the tip of it, which is the conscious level. Then when you look down there, you have a very small subconscious, and then most of the information, which is the deepest, the one which is in the deepest, is where we have the unconsciousness. And that is where the large amount is, or information is. So we are supposed also to know, how are we supposed to retrieve this information from the unconsciousness, then it comes to the consciousness. Okay? Then still under this analytical or psychoanalytical or psychodynamic, this is where we also talk about our early childhood experiences. And by the way, when we are bringing up our own children, the age which is critical, it is 0 to 7 years. 0 to 7 years, it's very critical because this one, it makes a child to shape, it can shape a child to their current behaviors now. So how have they been able to negotiate those stages? So, and that is what we say, our experiences, which we have gone through when we are growing up, as we were developing, they can have a very great impact on us as adults. And that is why we need really to know. That's why you find some people, they don't want to, they have the fears of maybe heights, fears of snakes or insects, or that darkness. They fear water. How do you fear water? Me, I fear water. The only water which can come across me is water in the basin. Why? Because you don't know where this is coming from. Even there are some people, you can invite them to your house. They can come, but they can't eat. Maybe when they were growing up, they followed someone, they went there, they ate, and they were beaten by their parents. So they have that one, it shaped them. Or some people went to school when they were underage. Now when they are growing up, they saw what was happening. Ndio mtu anakuambia, mimi siwezi peleka mtoto wangu boarding akiwa this age. Or maybe the way they were being treated, the parents were very strict. And when they grow up, this is what most of them maybe borrow, and they continue now bringing up their families the same way. So that is why you say that childhood experiences, they can also shape the current behavior. So 0 to 7 years or even 0 to 10 years, it's very critical in a child's development. So please, let's take care of that. And these ones also, they talk about, we have talked about the issue of the unconsciousness. We have talked about the issue of childhood experiences. We can also talk about the structure of personality. There are so many things which are under this theory. This is where we talk about those defense mechanisms. Like people like using defenses, like especially when you're having a conflict, like you have a wish and there's that external realities, they cannot match. Now things which you wanted are not working. Then from there, now you start running to use those defenses, where you start being in denial. You start also becoming, you try to retrieve those, you repress some of those issues. This is where you start projecting your issues on other people. This is where you start to displace the displacement. There are so many other defense mechanisms which all of us use. And under this, how are you going to help this client so that they can be able to uncover these unconscious materials and then they bring them to their consciousness? How are you going to let this child, or now who is an adult at this time, so that they can be able to discover what is these experiences they went through when they were young? So we have some interventions which we talk about these techniques. The techniques which whereby, how can you be able to help me to find out what I had repressed? Let me just talk about maybe my childhood experiences. And this is where, like, I think I asked you in the morning, can you be able to remember what happened to you when you were below 10 years? Those are now, when someone starts talking, you are using a technique here, which we call the free association. Free association is whereby a person talks freely. A person talks without censoring. They are narrating what they went through, or someone is trying to talk about the issues they have without you telling them, talk about this, don't talk about that, that one is not important. You don't interrupt them. Whether it makes sense to you or not, that person just talks. That is the free association. Freely. And when you, Sigmund Freud says, talking alone, it's a healing in itself, because it helps you to vent out those emotions. It helps you to express it out. And as you are talking, that is a healing itself, which is called catharsis. Then the other technique for helping these clients, so that they can, by that one, by the way, when you're using the free association, that is why you are told when you are lying, don't talk so much. You might find yourself talking even what you didn't want to talk. And you find when you're using this free association, what maybe some issues which you had repressed to the unconsciousness, you might find them popping up. Okay, they'll just come. Ndio unajikuta mtu ameongea. Okay, and then the other technique is the dream analysis. This is also one way which can be able to help you to uncover the unconscious materials which we have repressed, the materials which we don't want to be aware about, the materials which are going to make us to be uncomfortable. We don't want to be reminded about. But one other way to retrieve this information is through dream analysis. And this is what I usually ask. Have you ever dreamt? What was the dream about? That is a question I'm posing. Have you ever dreamt? What was the dream about? Hello? Have you ever dreamt? And if you have never dreamt, you need to go for a session. Have you ever dreamt? And what was the dream about? Yes? Have you ever dreamt? What was this dream? What was the dream about? Higher, we usually say don't push your client so much. But what Sigmund Freud says, yes, I can see a chart there. Once dreamt about Tana River. Paul, what was it about Tana River? It flooded. You flooded. What was the dream about? Yes, Paul, what was the dream about?
All right. It was in childhood, but I remember the river was covered with cartons. You know, I come from that side of Kenya, so we always passed on a river when going up country. So just there's a time I dreamt it was covered with cartons, and I think I was lying on the cartons. It looked very safe that I could not drown. Yeah. Then I think it didn't take long. The dream ended, but it was, it was that kind of a thing.
Where was this dream coming from? Is it because you usually cross that river, or you are seeing some people using those cartons?
No, there were no other people using the carton, but I think I knew it because we always pass there. It always marks the halfway point. So as a child, it was always, we were looking forward to crossing that bridge. Either knowing we are near Nyeri or now coming back, we are near Nairobi.
Okay.
But it was not scary. It was just interesting that we could not drown.
As an adult, do you dream? Currently, as an adult?
Rarely, very rarely.
As adults, yes, thank you so much, Paul. As adults, have you ever dreamt or have you ever had a dream? I'm asking the participants here, as adults, have you ever dreamt? What was the dream about? Hamjawahi ota, msiniambie ni vision muliona. Share with us that vision. Sigmund Freud ya ataiona kama ni dream. Na wale tumekuwa saved tutaiona kama a vision. But what was the dream about? A small one. Doesn't mean to be something big. Yes? Lucy was dreaming about the end of the world. Ilikujaje? Where has this dream come from? Na dunia inaishanga aje? Make us understand. Lucius, you're thinking about it. Ruth also dreamt of getting late for exams and my pen could not write. Lucy, Ruthie, were you going for an exam? Were you preparing for an exam? Or had you done an exam? Where are these dreams coming from? Where are the dreams coming from? what Sigmund Freud says here, all the dreams which we dream, we don't just dream. It was always so constant when I was young. I didn't know why. Okay, when according to Sigmund Freud, these dreams which we dream, we don't just dream. We have a reason why, or this information is just coming from somewhere. And these are those things, remember the one I was telling you, you have the subconscious, the conscious, the unconsciousness. When you're talking about the consciousness, those things you see and then they go. Like for instance, maybe you're walking in the streets and you see a very handsome or beautiful lady. Alafu najiambia, why to shetani ashindo? Mimi niko na ule wangu nyumbani. Where has that information gone? So when you go to sleep, now that will come in a form of a dream. You dream. And when we are talking about this dream, Sigmund Freud says, this is the royal road to the unconsciousness. For you to reach that consciousness, the one we are talking about, uncovering the unconsciousness, is through dreams. And these are those unfulfilled wishes, maybe the dreams, maybe you have some desires which you are trying to fulfill. And by the way, that is why we go into a dream. And mostly, especially when we have areas or some issues which are not resolved, they end up being come in a form of a dream. So whatever you are dreaming about, it has an origin. It is something you had suppressed, but you are not aware about it. And that is what Sigmund Freud says. For us to be able to uncover this unconsciousness, then we have to go through the dreams. So when you ask someone, what was the dream? That is a wish someone has. That is an issue someone has repressed to the unconsciousness, but now it slipped out and it came to the consciousness. So those dreams, they have a meaning. Those are some of the issues which are not resolved. Those are some of the issues some people have repressed. Then we have the transference. When we talk about transference, this is where you overreact towards your client or towards your employees. I don't know whether you have experienced this. Like someone talks to you with a lot of anger, with a lot of heart. It's like they're expressing it. And we say, when someone is, when a client reacts to the therapist as if they're the ones who have made them to go through that issue, that is transference. This is whereby they are shifting their unconsciousness to the therapists, like the previous experiences to the therapist. And I've said, dear, this is when a client overreacts. So you come where someone is talking to you, and then hey, please don't talk to me. That client at that time was using that transference, where a client becomes aware of the emotions and they release those emotions or feelings, and which is a healing in itself. And Sigmund Freud says, during that time, you let the client be, let them talk about it, let them express their concerns, their issues, their anger and everything. And from there, that you ask them when they're calm, what was going on in their mind. By that time, they're using that transference. And transference can be in many ways. It can be a positive one. And this is whereby they are seeing you as their role model, they're talking positively about you. It can be a negative transference, whereby they are venting out that anger, or it can be a sexualized transference. A sexualized transference is whereby they now start developing that feeling of attachment towards you. Those are some of the techniques. You let the client be. Then from there, you can ask them to explain to you what is happening to them or what they're telling themselves. That is under Sigmund Freud, under psychoanalytic, psychodynamic. And this is why they also talk about the slip of tongue. Kuna zingine someone talks and is calling you like Paul. Like now, I've just met Paul today. And then after some time, when I go to sleep, I start dreaming, like now, even when we are talking about that slip of tongue, I start calling everyone Paul, Paul. And then someone asks me, who is this Paul? and maybe this is John or this is Tom, and I'm calling this person Paul. Alafu naweza kusema, oh, sorry, Paul was my student once online. There's no slip of tongue. Everything, and the slip of tongue is the one we need to follow up, whereby it has a lot, is something which has slipped, which didn't want to come out of the unconsciousness, but it has come out. Follow that one and let that client talk more about that. That is psychoanalytic. Then we have the behavioral theory. Any question on psychoanalytic before we move to the behavioral? Okay, let's move to the behavior. Let me assume that keeping quiet means I move on, but anytime you feel like you want to ask a question, kindly don't hesitate. Then we have the behavioral theory. When you talk about the behavioral theory, remember the psychoanalytic, psychodynamic, psychoanalytical, this was the first classification or the first force theory. And remember I told you when a theory, someone is developing a theory or a concept, there are some people who can agree with Sigmund Freud, some disagreed with them. So there are some people who disagreed with what the psychoanalytic were talking about, and they said, no, it's not about our childhood experiences, it's not about our past experiences or the issues we have repressed to the unconsciousness. What makes us to behave the way we are feeling, these are the behaviorists. They talked about the environment. These ones, they talk about the environment under behavioral, whereby they disagreed with what the psychoanalysts were taking us. How do you take us back? You start asking us, at what happened to you when you are below 10 years? When can I be able to remember 10 years? And now I'm almost 70 years. But Sigmund Freud says that there is no forgetting. You cannot tell people that you have forgotten. So the behaviorists came in, and here we have the behavioral theory, which this theory is based on the idea that behavior is learned. By the way we learn a behavior, you can unlearn that behavior and you can relearn the same behavior. So behavior is learned through observation or through conditioning or through reinforcement. You can learn that behavior. But still, whatever behavior you have learned, it can be unlearned. And this is what you're going to look at it. How can we unlearn a behavior? Or once you have unlearned, you can still relearn it. So it depends where you want to be and what you need to do. So this theory is about behavior is learned and it can be changed either through conditioning. And when you look at conditioning, the key people who are under conditioning, this is Pavlov, Ivan Pavlov. I mentioned this earlier, whereby he did an experiment using the dog, the bell, and the food. And what was neutralizing here, it is that bell. Because the dog was there, the food was being given, and the dog was salivating. But now Pavlov, what he did, he brought in a neutral stimuli, which was the bell. So as the bell was rung, it was accompanied by food, and the dog continued to salivate. So anytime it was hearing the bell ringing, it definitely knew there will be food. And this is what I was talking about, the way the weather is. The ones who are in Nairobi, you're looking at it, is so dull. You can't know whether it's lunchtime. But because you have gotten used to taking your lunch between 12:30 and 1 or 1:30, then utaanza kusikia fani unasema, oh, nilijua tu. When I started feeling hungry, I knew the food was to be ready. It was lunchtime. The same way this dog, when it was hearing the bell, definitely it knew there is food. It continued to salivate. And now what Pavlov did, he removed the food and he continued to ring the bell. The dog continued to salivate because it had gotten conditioned, gotten used that anytime the bell rings, it was going to get the food. And later, the dog reached somewhere. The bell was being rung. There was no food. Ikasalivate, ikafika mahali, the bell rings, it stopped also to salivate, which he called you extinguish that behavior. That is, you unlearn what you have been conditioned with. And this is what mostly even happens to us. Like now you're going to work, you're working, you have some targets. If you surpass your target, you're given a bonus. Then it reaches a time, you work, you surpass your target, you're given a bonus. Then it reaches a time, you work, you surpass your target, there's no bonus. Unasema mengine wataleta. You repeat the same, no bonus. So inafika mahali nasema, hey, let me work and achieve my targets. Because that whatever conditioned, the behavior you had learned, you are now unlearning it. And that is what even happens to human beings. Then he also talks about Skinner. This is B.F. Skinner, who also did an experiment using the rats. And imagine that's what at times I ask myself, when do we behave like animals or like rats? So for him, this experiment is called operant condition because when he's talking about the operant itself, is like it's operational. So for him, what he did in that environment, he brought there was a box, he put a rat in, and there was a green button, whereby when this rat was in that box, remember we are talking about the environment in which we are, it can shape the way we behave. So in this environment, there was that box, there was that green button. And then when this rat was hungry, it was to go round within that environment, which is within that carton, and it stepped on the green button. Then there was a level of food which was dropping. It ate, it went to relax. And again, it felt hungry. It went back, it stepped on that green button, the food was coming. So that behavior was repeated because there was a reward which was positive. And this reinforcement can either be positive or negative. But in this box, this carton, where it was, the reinforcement was positive because it was getting food. And when the reinforcement is positive, then that behavior is repeated. Like if someone does something good, then you reinforce them by giving them food, buying them gifts, approving them, giving that approval. You know, that behavior is reinforced and someone feels like you can be able to do it continuously. So then in the same environment, Skinner put a rat in that environment, and there was a button which was red. So when this rat felt hungry, it went round, it stepped on that red button, it got a shock. Remember the other one was green? It was pressing it, it was getting a reward of food. It was, instead of it now pressing to wait to get a reward, it was getting a shock. It tried again, it got a shock, it can withdraw. You cannot be able to maybe repeatedly repeat that behavior because the reinforcement again here is going to be negative. So that behavior is not there. Ni kama you're working so hard, you're not getting any promotion, you're not getting an approval, you're not getting any reward, then you just say, let me do what brought me here. Because I know I'm not going to get anything extra. Wacha nifanyie kamshahara kangu. Because there's no reward. So you find that if the reinforcement is negative, that behavior is not repeated. And if the reinforcement is positive, that behavior is going to be repeated many times. And then he also talks about punishment. And when we talk about punishment, this is whereby you want to eliminate or you want to weaken a certain behavior. And rather than it being increased, you want to reduce it or you want to weaken it. And this is whereby you, like the stimulant which is there, it's supposed to introduce to elicit or to make that appropriate behavior less desirable. And this is where we say, like, it is working directly to bring in that unpleasant stimuli like a shock, now you give that punishment because you want to eliminate that behavior. For instance, if that punishment has to be effective, there are some things we need to do. If your employee has been coming to work late, wacha kungojeanga first quarter, unaandika date, the time, and the second month unaandika, third month, alafu when you're going to do half year appraisal is when now you bring, when you came here first quarter, this is, you did this, you did this, and then you want to give this punishment. Then we say, punish, like punished behavior maybe is not forgotten. It is just repressed or suppressed. And when you're also giving out this punishment, let us give in appropriate behavior, like for it to work effectively when you're giving a punishment. If there's that inappropriate behavior, it has to be immediately punished. Na unaleta mtu unamwambia, this is what you do is not right, don't repeat it. And this is why I'm giving you this punishment. So you punish the client immediately. 2, for this punishment to work effectively, the intensity of the punishment, there's that punishment which we give, has to commensurate with the offenses committed by this employee. Like I remember this one, we had a class, and when I said this, one of the students said, in their office, a boss had a soda in his office. He left it there. When he came back, he found that one of the employees went into the office and drank his soda. A soda. Do you know what he did? The kind of punishment this employee was given? He was sacked. So was that punishment commensurating with what this employee did? In fact, angempatia negative reinforcement. Amwambie, I want you to buy a whole crate of soda and everyone in this office to drink. That one was to be a reinforcement which was negative, but is going to make this employee to learn his mistake. But when you're giving a very severe punishment like that one, then it's not commensurating with what this employee did. Let's not go extreme. Then again, when you're giving out this punishment, let the state, you have to know the state of the state of the mind of the person meting out this punishment. It should be considered, how is the state of mind? How is his state of mind when you're giving out this punishment? Are you giving it with a lot of anger? Are you you want to revenge? Or which is going to neutralize the punishment which you are giving him? So when you're giving out this punishment, you have to be aware whether it is going to be effective or not. Any question on those 2 theories before I move to the next one? Any question on those 2 theories? So we are just mentioning there's so much which is not being mentioned here, is because of time. The other concept or another theory is the cognitive theory. This cognitive theory, mostly, I remember again, we have just mentioned it even in the first module, the cognitive theory. It more emphasizes on our thoughts, the role of thoughts, how they influence our emotions. And these emotions are the feelings. And these feelings, how they make us to behave or to act. And that is why I was also giving you that, that example of the morning. This is the worst class. And I asked you, what came to your mind? How did it make you feel? So it's about the thoughts, that is the mind, which is influencing the emotions, the feelings, which you are able to express, and how some of us acted. There are those pioneers like Albert Ellis and Aaron Beck. They developed techniques to change these dysfunctional thinking patterns, which are going to help to improve those emotional well-being. And when we talk about the cognitive, I've talked about the rush. We are born with that potential of either being rational or irrational. And it is us who makes choices to be disturbed when you're looking at that theory of cognitive behavioral theory. And under this theory, it's us who decides to be upset. And we are the ones who decide to start thinking in a crooked way. Under this cognitive behavioral theory, this is where we talk about the emotional disturbance. We are the ones, what is this which makes us to have those emotional disturbances? One is the language we use. Like some people, maybe they say they want to be promoted. And I must be promoted before the end of 2024. I must, I should, I ought. That language can make you to have those emotional disturbances, those dysfunctional thinking. And that is what he says, that the language we use. And this language, like the one I've said, you should, you must, you ought, is kind of your demanding. And if your demand is and the command is not met, how does that make you feel? It's going to make you to have those psychological disturbances. And this is where he also talks about the ABC, the activating event, what the situation is. You are saying that you want to be promoted by the end of the year. That is what you're telling yourself. And then here you are being told that there is no promotion. We have to budget. The companies don't have money, so there's no way we are going to promote you. And the only thing you're being told by that HR is like, there will be no promotion this year. Let's wait next year, we see if we can be able to look into that. That is the activating event. What is your belief when you are told that there will be no promotion this year? Are you going to be rational or are you going to be irrational? Then at the same time, what will be the consequences out of your belief, which is either rational or irrational? So it is you who has chosen to be disturbed. Then we come in with those interventions where we are talking about thinking about cognitive restructuring. You start thinking in a positive way. This is where you bring in that humor. This is where you bring in that issue of questioning. This is where you start looking at things from a rational perspective. That is what the cognitive behavioral theory deals with. And this is what he emphasizes, that this is what is going to help us so that we can be able to improve our dysfunctional patterns of thinking, and we have that emotional wellness. Any question up to there? Any question? Okay, if there's no question, let's look at another theory, which is the humanistic. Go to bed, and also get bed. I'm so sorry. I'm having a child here who is disturbing me. Sorry for that. I'm very, very sorry. Okay. We have another theory, which is the humanistic. Remember, I told you there was a first classification, which was the psychoanalytical. And after psychoanalytical, we have the behaviorists. Under behaviorists, we have the behavioral theory, which we have looked at, about the environment, learning and relearning. Then we have the cognitive, which is more concerned about the thoughts, the emotions, and the behaviors. The two, behavioral and cognitive, they are under the behavioristic. they're still under the same school, but it's only that one talked about the environment and another one talked about their thoughts. Then this second classification, which is of the behaviorists, there are some who disagreed with them. You cannot tell us it's about the environment. You cannot tell us it's about what comes to our mind. And these are now the humanistic. Under humanistic, we have, these are the ones now, they mostly focus on the potential and the importance of growth and that self-actualization, because they want to see clients growing. They are telling themselves their clients have the potential. So there's that, they focus on individual potential. What are you good in? What resources do you have within you? And how can this help you to grow so that you can be able to actualize? And this one, by the way, they borrowed from Abraham hierarchy of needs. Remember the hierarchy of needs by Abraham Maslow? These are the people who are talking about self-actualization. That is where this humanistic also, they have borrowed from. And from this theory of the humanistic, generally, what we are going to look at, we are going to break it down, but generally when you look at it, they are talking about the basic assumption which is behind this humanistic or human psychology. They are more concerned on the someone's present functioning. Someone is present functioning. And this is where we say, this is where you want to know, how is this person feeling as per the here and now? Remember where we talked about counseling is more concerned about the feelings. Guidance is more concerned about the facts. And I said, when clients come to us, they'll be talking about the others. But now here we let them to talk about themselves. And the same ones we said, clients at times when they come, they like talking about the past, but we want them to talk about the present. This is now what we're talking about, the present functioning. Whatever happened, no matter how many years down the line, when they are now talking about it here, whether it is a year ago or 2 minutes ago or 20 years ago, when they talk about it, how are they presently functioning? How they talk about the here and now. They talk about the here and now, how they are feeling. So they try to examine or about the past or attempting to predict about the future. So we want to know how you're working here because the past has gone. The future has not come. So when you're thinking about the future and you're thinking about the past, how does it make you feel as per the here and now? So when someone comes and talks about those issues, ask them how it makes them feel as they're talking about it here and now. So we are so much like concerned about the people to take responsibility. This is where we are talking about we should not advise our clients. We want the clients, like whatever is happening, so the mentally health of individual must take responsibility, personal responsibility for their actions. That's why we say whatever decision you're going to make, as long as it has come from you and it is you who have decided what to do, if it succeeds, we say good. If it is negative, you own it up. Positive or negative outcomes, you'll be able to take that responsibility, regardless of whether the actions are going to be positive or negative. You'll be able to take that responsibility. But when someone else tells you what you need to go and do, this is what disturbs us. So this is what the humanistics do. So, and we have talked about actualization. When you look at that hierarchy of needs, we have those physiological needs, the basic needs. Then there you want to have that security. Then you want to feel that you belong. Then you want also here to have that self-esteem, to have that esteem. Then you want to actualize. And as long as you're going through that ladder, That is where you use your individual potential, and this is what is going to help you to grow, and you'll be able to actualize, and you'll be where you are. So I want to look at one of the approaches, which is the Carl Rogers client-centered therapy, before I go to the Gestalt therapy. Any question up to there? Any question up to there? Any question up to there? Hey, people, can you talk? Any question on that humanistic introduction before I talk about person-centered? At least mkiandika hivyo nasikia tuko pamoja. Tobis, thank you so much. That is done so far, okay. Thank you, Raphaels. At least ndio ninajua tuko pamoja. I'm talking all alone. Thank you. Now, under this humanistic, we have the key approaches. One of them being the humanistic. Sorry, being the Carl Rogers. Carl Rogers is one person, when he was coming up with this approach, he started it from far. And this is why he was saying, like, when clients come to us, they know it all. They have the potential. They know what they want to do. And that is why his theory is called client-centered. At times it's called client-directed. It's non-directive. You put the client first. They know what they want to address. They know the issues they are going through. And even some call this theory Rogerian therapy, because it's from Rogers. So here, it is the client who is an expert. They know what they want to do. It's only that they don't want to take that responsibility. Just know when that employee comes to you, they are only coming because they are stuck. So yours is just to listen to them. You even ask them what maybe needs to be done, and they know. They know what is supposed to be done. And this is also the person who talks about like a fully functioning person is a person who is able to self-actualize, who could function fully. And that is where he uses that, how do I call it? Where I talk about, how do I say, the self-actualization, because they know what they want and they can work towards it. So Carl Rogers is also the one who talks about you can get something out of a mess. So there's no one whom you can say that is not worth. You cannot say that this person is of no value, that you can get something out of that mess, and this is going to be of great importance. So Carl Rogers is the one also who talks about now, how do you need to help such like clients, whereby when we talk about, in his concept, he talked about the self-concept. For you to be helping clients, you need to understand some concepts, who this person is, their self-esteem, their ideal self, their body image, their ideal self, for you to be able to understand who a person is. So when you look at those elements, they are going to help you to understand a person, an individual, who or she is, and you also get to understand what they are aware about themselves. So there's so much which needs to be done in this theory. But for him, he came up and emphasized that if you have to assist these clients, it only has like, how do I put it? Some techniques, the interventions you can use helping these clients. Is only that you need to possess the core conditions. The core conditions, which we talked about, empathy. And empathy, we said, is whereby you feel as if you're the one in that situation. You try to imagine what your client is going through. You try to be at the same wavelength with your client. You try to wear the client's shoe. You feel with your client. That is empathy. Then you also emphasized on the unconditional positive regard. What did we say is unconditional positive regard? What is unconditional positive regard? What is unconditional positive regard?
You accept you accept a client as he is without without showing whether you disagree or agree with his point of view.
Yes. Yeah. Unconditional positive regard. Thank you so much, Virginia. Unconditional positive regard. No matter how offensive, like what Virginia said, no matter how offensive some of the behaviors of the clients are, can you be able to accept them unconditionally? Can you be able to work with them without you labeling them? Without you maybe saying this one, you give a condition, this needs to be done on that. Accept them the way they are. This is also where he talked about the genuineness, where he talked about the genuineness. Here, this is also another core condition. And the genuineness, we said, this is where you talk about being the real you. You don't pretend, you don't wear a facade, you don't wear a mask, you be the real you. The inner you and the outer you matches. Let's not pretend. If it's green, call it green, not light green. Okay, so if you have all those according to Carl Rogers, then these ones are going, and also you respect your client, you accept your client the way he or she is. This one is going to enhance that conducive environment for the client where they can be able to freely share their issues. That is what, that is what Carl Rogers talks about under the person-centered theory. And then there comes the Gestalt. Gestalt, yes, is a humanistic, but again, it's just talking about Gestalt. This is a German word, which is also used here, whereby he talks about it means whole. The Gestalt word is a German word, which means whole, which means that configuration, which means that integration. There are patterns, which are the form of patterns which you need to work together. And this is now what I was telling you, that Gestalt, who is a humanistic, it focuses on the present experiences. It also focuses on self-responsibility. And that is why he said under the humanistic, there's so much concern about their present functioning. And this present functioning, it's in relation with the experiences these employees or these clients are going through. So it is more about their pattern, how they are looking at the client's world. This is the one who was talking about the phenomenological world of the client. He emphasized more like when you're dealing with the client, it's more about what they want to do under Gestalt theory is to create that self-awareness. Are you aware of what is happening with you. Are you aware what is making you to behave the way you are behaving? It is the one which emphasizes on the here and now. That experiential, we want you to talk about it. Then we get to know how you are feeling as per the here and now. And Gestalt, when he was working on it, and by the way he says, let me look at that Gestalt theory. When he was looking at it, he was saying that when you are dealing with a client, we want to deal with the client because people have what we call unfinished business. When he was talking about unfinished business, this is when we have some issues. Like for instance, when we are talking about, by the way, as you are here, do you have issues? The ones who are here, we are the 18 of us. Do you have any issue or any challenge or any problem? See, who is in which problem, but do we have those issues? Do we have issues?
Obvious.
Then you understand obvious. Do we have issues? Who has said obvious? Okay. As we are here, each one of us, we have some issues, we have some concerns, we have some problems. Those ones are the ones Gestalt is calling the unfinished business. And we need to finish this business. How do we finish them? By us talking about them, so that we take up that responsibility. So we have these issues which we need to address. Thank you, Virginia. So we have all these issues which we all need to address. So those are some of the things which Gestalt talks about. And he also talks about the issue of, how do I call it? Whole. At times, whole, yeah, W-H-O-L. At times, when clients come to us, they are split. In the sense that, I don't know whether you've ever seen someone, when he or she you are with them, you're in a meeting, you're talking about something, someone is here physically, but their thoughts are so far. And then it's just looking at one spot. And it's just quiet. Ukimwita ndiye anarudi, namwambia just come back, welcome back. That person has gone so far. That one, he says that that person is already split. You can split in the thoughts, in the actions, in what you're doing, because you're not whole. And we need to help this client so that they can be able to be whole, instead of them being split. So this is the awareness we also need to bring to them. And there's that avoidance. Some clients, when they have issues, they don't want to talk about the issues which are going to cause them any pain. They try to avoid. So if you're bringing an issue which is going to elicit the feelings which they had repressed, they don't want you to talk about it. And that is why you find some people, once they have undergone a loss, and they are supposed to be watching those videos they take, they don't want to look at them. They use the avoidance. Why? It's going to elicit those painful emotions. That is the avoidance. For how long? This is the person who talks about the energy blocks. Energy blocks in the sense that, have you heard when someone is talking, he talks with a lot of anger, mpaka na bang mesa? Or as he's talking, anasemanga amenyongwa na kiwaru. Amenyongwa. Raphael, you don't have issues. Well, you have to have issues. You need counseling, because every person needs to have these challenges. Thank you. So at times when clients are talking, or even you when you are talking, at times when you are having that anger, at times the wordings cannot be able to come out, because you get what we call the energy blocks. There's that energy block that is, instead of it coming out, it gets blocked here. So among the other, and like when clients, he also talks about when clients come to us and they want to share their issues, they have to study the environment. They are not very sure whether you are the person to be trusted, that they can be able to open up and talk about their issues. So in Akwanga, I likened it with what he called layers of neurosis, whereby he talked about the onion. That onion. When you remove the outer layer, how do you feel in your eyes? Ile maganda imekauka. Do you feel anything? We don't feel anything. And as you continue going deeper, peeling it, and as you go deeper, then you start crying. It's the same way when clients come for a session, they are like that onion. They want to peel out those layers. So the first one is they try to remove the dry ones to see, this is where they wear the mask, they try to pretend. They will just talk maybe what you want to hear. Then after some time, they tell you, now let me tell you the truth. Because they have picked that you are a person who can be trusted. Now they go to the second layer, they go to the third layer, they go deep until they talk about the core issues. Those are the funny layers. If we have time, maybe we can be able to do that. But now, how do you come in and you assist such like clients according to Gestalt theory? Because it is focusing on the present experiences and self-responsibility. The techniques under this theory, in fact, they are not few and they're not many. You can talk about the exaggeration. There are times when someone is talking, ama mmekaa na mtu amekaa vizuri, and then he starts fidgeting the feet, anatingisha miguu, or is banging down is stamping down, or is banging the table when he's talking. You ask them to exaggerate those non-verbals. So as you are doing that, they tell you, no, that's when I'm comfortable. Already you've brought them to their wholeness. They are now aware about themselves. They are back. The other one is whereby some people, when they come to a session, they can talk about their issues as a second person. They talk as if they're talking about someone else. Instead of them saying, I have this issue, you hear something, there's a person who has this issue, and these issues, this is how they're making it. Now, unajua is talking about himself. So they talk as if that is a second person, and they're talking about them. We want them to start owning up, and they talk about I. This is where you also use the dialogue, whereby they can be able to sit, they talk, they share the issues. And this is where we encourage clients also to use another technique, which we call the empty chair technique, whereby you have to sit. One, you sit on it. The client sits on one seat. The other one is empty. So any unfinished business they have, they can imagine as if that person is the one sitting there. Whether a person is alive or deceased, they can put them there. Even if it's your boss, put him there. Even if it is your spouse, wachananga kutukanana. Don't quarrel with your spouse. Put him on that empty chair seat. Talk to him, abuse him, tell him whatever you wanted to tell him. Have that emotion, express it there, vent it out. Then you move from this seat, like the way I'm sitting. I sit on that empty chair. I be that person whom I have unfinished business with. I try to imagine how he could have responded to me. So I'm there as that person. I try to imagine what he could have told me. Then he'll tell me. And then I'll come back here. By the way, when you keep on doing that, you are venting out those experiences or those emotions which you're going through. And it's a very good technique, but you need to practice so that you get to know how to use it. Hii maneno tulisimama kwa neighbor, tulikuwa tunarushiana maneno, wachana nayo. Even if it's your boss, wachana nayo. Bosses are always right. If it's your spouse, if it's your child, if it's whoever, family member, na mko na finished business with them, just come and put them on the seat. By the time you meet, mnakutana tumpaka wanashangaa, kwani huyu is not reacting. Kumbe usha vent kwa ile empty chair. So those are some of the techniques under the Gestalt theory. Any question in that theory, from that theory? Okay. I don't know what it means keeping quiet, but let me assume. So we have the integrative or holistic therapy. And this is where we talk about, at times we can also call it eclectic. This is whereby you see the theories you've been looking at them. We have looked psychoanalysis, we have looked at behavioral, cognitive behavioral therapy. We have gone the humanistic, we have talked about the person-centered, we have talked about the Gestalt. Now here we are, we want to look at the integrative or holistic therapy, which I've also called the eclectic therapy. Whereby, you know, this one we are doing them separately. Because for the ones maybe we're doing exams, especially if we have some students here, when you're going to sit for your exam, wanakulizanga, they be specific as a psychoanalyst, or as a behavioral therapist, or as a cognitive therapist, or as a person-centered, or as a Gestalt. Ama they can ask you as a humanistic, or as a behaviorist, okay? So they're always specific. And that is why we do them separately. But now when we are sitting for a session, the skills you are saying that you need to acquire, when you're going to be assisting your employees, now you become eclectic, holistic, or you become integrative, whereby depending on the issues the individuals are going to present to you, you tailor-make that treatment to the needs of that client. Because you look at it, hii inaweza kuwa ni childhood, hii inaweza kuwa ni what is coming to their thoughts, hii inaweza kuwa maybe it's about what they have learned from the environment in where he was living, or hii inaweza kuwa because of 1, 2, 3. So you listen to the issue the client is going to present to you, then you tailor-make that treatment to suit the client or the employee you are dealing with. And this approach recognizes that no single theory can address all aspects of clients' issues. There's no single theory. So you keep on borrowing depending on the issues the client is going to present to you. Which one do you think can be able to work for them? Which one do you need to ask your question depending on the concept you have at the back of your mind? Which intervention are you going to use here? Okay? So here is when now you as helpers at the workplaces, you become eclectic. Even the theories you have learned under motivation. Secondary motivation mnafanyanga kwa HR, and you feel like maybe there's something you need to borrow from there, which can be able to help this client, you pick it. Any theory you have learned and you feel like it's going to be relevant, you're going to tailor-make it so that you can be able to intervene on the issues the client is presenting here, then you can be able to borrow and use it. And these theories or provide a framework which are going to help you to understand the client's behavior. What is making Flora to behave the way she's behaving? What is making her to have the thoughts she's having? What is making her to have the emotions? And guide you as a helper in developing effective treatment plan. Depending on the client you're going to look at. Any question up to there? So mukienda kama ni job, kama ni nyumbani, kama ni kwa kanisa, kama ni shule, wherever you will be eclectic, be integrative, be holistic, borrow from different, any of them. But if it's an exam, you are specified, you do what you've been asked to answer. And I guess most of this these are some of the things which you have looked at. Karim is saying she loves the empty chair technique. By the way, this one, it helps. Like one time we went for a training and we used to spend there, and I was like, hey people, why can't we go after supper, because we're taking supper at 6? We just come and we do a few of exercises, therapy here. And then they said, okay, we'll come. They came. As we were there, wacha waanze kuambiwa empty chair. And they were just to sit there and imagine, come up with any unfinished business. As long as you come up with a real issue where people really cried. At that time, they were not even aware that there were other people around them, because you totally get lost into your own issues. And that is how therapy works. Thank you. Then we can move to the theory-based intervention techniques. Therapy-based therapy techniques. I'll go a bit faster because I'm seeing there's so much, and we have like 1 hour and 15 minutes. Let's see what we can be able to do. When we talk about theory-based intervention, there are some theories, some theory-based intervention techniques and styles, which are commonly used in counseling and psychotherapy. Like what we talked about, cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive behavioral therapy, that is the CBT. This is by Albert Ellis. This is about how we choose to be disturbed, how we have the potential, but we become irrational, which focuses more on identifying and changing negative thought patterns and behaviors. And what is going to help us to change these thought patterns? If we are going to look at some of those techniques, whereby we talked about the cognitive restructuring. When Albert Ellis talks about cognitive restructuring, this is whereby instead of you always thinking things negative, in fact, just go and listen to people. The ones who have issues, mostly what they do, hakuna kitu positive someone thinks about. They're only thinking negatively. They're only having like, kila kitu mimi sitaweza, no one loves me, everyone hates me. Already they have gone negative. So when they're always negative, then they cannot be able to move on. And that is why we are saying they need to have that, to restructure their thoughts. But they cannot make it. They can say, I'll make it. Let me try. And I'll be confident. Kuanguka once is not the last one. Like when I was doing my higher diploma in HR, I used to say, I can't make it. There's so many assignments. There's a lot of work. And I remember my colleague telling me, and then I also told myself, by the way, why can't I just try it? I know I'll make it. If I don't make it, I'll not be the first one. So I just told myself, let me try my best. That is the cognitive restructuring, because if you go negative, you cannot be able to achieve your goal. Exposure therapy, this is whereby you talk about those experiences you have gone through, which you have been exposed to, so that you talk about them. And when you are talking about them, some people, they feel like they're having a lot of emotions. They don't want to talk about them. Expose yourself to that. Then behavioral activation, that is whatever behaviors you have. I know some people don't like talking about the things which are going to make them to have those anxieties. Remember, mostly when you're dealing with the behaviorists, they want to unlearn those anxieties, maybe what we call it, the obsessive compulsive disorder. They want to come out of it. But we say that always participate in that. You go back to that. And that's why we say, if you want to unlearn a behavior, then you have to expose yourself to that therapy. Like when people fear heights, they fear whatever fears they have, you expose them to that therapy so that they can be able to unlearn that behavior, whereby you can be able to use you have to be relaxed first, and then you use the flooding, you can use the systematic desensitization to help you to unlearn those behaviors. So behavioral activation and exposure, you have to talk about it and you expose yourself to that. Then the other intervention is about the solution-focused brief therapy. As I said, this is, it's like a first aid therapy, which mostly emphasizes this theory. It mostly emphasizes on finding solutions in the present time. Like this now, how am I going to sort out this issue? And by that, you're going to explore one's hope for the future. And where could you like to be? What is this you want to achieve? How is it going to help you? And this is where the miracle, like when I was talking about the miracle questioning, or you ask that miracle question. And this is where we say, suppose you go to sleep. And the issues which you have, they are all resolved. Now, upon an issue, what miracle is going to happen? And this is where one time, one of the clients who was in the office, he was a workaholic. Unajua wale watu wanapenda kazi, eh? So he used to be in the office everywhere in the morning. He comes home with the laptop, he is on work. And then the wife went to the office to complain. And as she complained, the HR called the husband. Akamwambia, I want you to go and see a counselor. And I'm like, to see what? I've just said, go and see the counselor. So he went to see the counselor. And the counselor asked this husband, this man, how can I help you? And then the client said, I don't know. I was just told by the HR to come here. So what is this you think you want maybe to be talked about? What do you want us to talk about? I don't know. I hear my wife came and she was complaining. What was the complaint about? That I'm a workaholic. I'm so busy. I don't have time for her. I don't even talk to her. I'm only thinking about work. What do you think you can do differently? If you want maybe to go and sleep and you wake up, what is this you can do so that your wife can be able to see things happening differently? Then he thought about it and he said, I think I'll just smile back. When she smiles to me, I also smile back. I think even my dogs will also be able to smile. Do you know that is a miracle question? He talked and he thought about it. I'll just imagine me smiling to her. And when I smile to her, she'll be happy. Even my dogs will also be happy. Everyone will be happy. So, and from there, that is what he went to implement and it worked. So this miracle question, you can be able to use it under the solution focused therapy because we say it's a solution brief therapy, a very brief one to find a solution to the challenging you're going through. Then we have the scaling questions. If when you're going for a therapy, you're given a scale of 10 to 1, 10 is the worst, coming down to the 1, which is the best. The issues you are talking about, if you are to scale your boss, at what scale will he be? Ate huyo, ningempea 10. Hata kama ingekuwa ningempea 10.5 atuendi huko. So what is this? You think that maybe you need to do so that you can be able to accommodate your boss? Because there are things which you cannot be able to change, but it has to come from you. So you use that scaling. And this is where we also say, even us, when we go for a counseling session, you scale yourself, you are at level 10. So where do you want to, like now when we are after maybe 5 sessions or we are 7th session, where do you scale yourself? Is there any growth? End growth means, have you gained any insight? Have you benefited from this session? Is it of any value for you to come for this session? What is there any difference? Where can you scale yourself now? It's like, where are you rating yourself now? Those are some of the techniques which you use under the solution focused therapy, the brief therapy. Yeah, it has so much. By the way, it's a quick session, but we usually say that this one, it will not make a client to explore more. It's like it wants the instant solutions. Present time, you want to find a solution there. And even exploring one's hope for the future, where you could like to be if this issue will not be there and such like. But it is done when there is a crisis. Let me say that, crisis therapy. So just imagine you wake up tomorrow and you don't have any issue. Motivational interviewing. And this is a client-centered approach. You remember the one we were talking about, the Carl Rogers? He borrows from here, that it enhances motivation in a sense that when you are motivating a client or a client feels like they are motivated, and it's a client-centered approach. Client-centered approach is like is the client who is leading, and you're able to create that environment for them to change by exploring and resolving those ambivalences. So the techniques which are involved here, especially when you're doing motivational, I know this one you've done under HR, I guess so. Maybe most of you are HRs. If you're not, still it's okay. The techniques which are involved here, remember we say that let's always engage in open-ended questions. Don't ask questions which are only going to limit you or to limit your client by giving you an answer, yes, no. Were you here in the morning? No. Did you pick what we learned in the morning? Yes. What is this you picked? Skills, and that is all. Just get to know, like, may I get, what is this maybe you can be able to make me understand on the issues you are going through. Then that client will start from anywhere. You actively listen, you have that affirmations, which you're going to, when you're listening to this client, the client will feel motivated. They will feel motivated because it's the client leading, they want to talk comfortably, they want to be respected. Then we also have that acceptance and commitment therapy. Remember, the clients who are coming for a session, and this is what I mentioned earlier, the session can be voluntary or involuntary. Even if it's involuntary and you talk to them and then they accept and they get committed to attend that session, then it is okay. It encourages clients to accept their thoughts and feelings rather than fighting or feeling guilt for themselves. You know, when you are fighting, you're always blaming yourself. You know, when you blame yourself, you are guilt sort of. It's because of me. This is what, just do what you can. Accept whatever you are. So as a client, it encourages clients to accept their thoughts and feelings. And it is okay to think the way you are thinking. It's okay to feel the way you are feeling. But now we want to look at it. What is this which is going to help you so that you don't have those negative thoughts? You don't have those irrational thoughts. You don't start thinking in a crooked way. Some of the techniques which are going to be used here is that mindfulness exercise. Mindful exercise is when you are thinking in a way which is going to be positive, so that whatever you are going to do is going to change the way your thoughts are. And once you change your thoughts, they are also going to change your feelings. And always be committed. Whatever actions you want to take, you have to show that commitment. Yes, that's why we say even when you're taking your client through a process, yes, you can explore. Yes, they can go to an understanding, but are they ready to take the action plans, to implement what they have learned? Unless they get committed, then the implementation becomes impossible. But once they get committed, then they can be able to implement and transfer whatever they have learned. Then we have the attachment-based therapy. When we talk about the attachment-based therapy, focuses more on the relationships and it bonds between people. And remember, we say that mostly in some of the, like when you are humanistic, it's more about relationships. You have to be closer. You have to have that intimacy relationship, particularly between the client and their caregivers. The people are taking care of them, the people are counseling them, the people are talking to them, the people are assisting them. But what is needed here for all this to take place is to involve that trust. These caregivers, these helpers, this whoever is coming into their figure, this person has to build that trust. You have to explore the past attachment experiences, what they have gone through. Why are they fearing to have that good relationship with you? Maybe they trusted someone so much who betrayed them. So what is this you're going to do so that you can be able to build that trust? If they have those past experiences, how are you going to amend that so that these clients can be able to bond with you and they can be able to create that relationship with you? Especially if a person was betrayed. There was that betrayal. Then it also becomes so difficult to deal with these clients. The mindful-based interventions incorporate those mindfulness practices to help clients become more aware of their thoughts. You know, when we talk about the mindset, is it a growth mindset? Is it a closed mindset? Is it like they don't want to listen to other people? So they need to practice so that they can be able to help clients to become aware of their thoughts and feelings. This is where you can be able to use mediation. You can use breathing in exercises. And mostly you find this, it comes under the behavioral theory. Yeah? Behaviorist. Ndio wale wanasemanga, breathe in and out. You can use the yoga, you can meditate, because you want your muscles even to be relaxed. Mindful movement, this is why we talk about the exposure, where we talk about the mind. They're thinking about what they have gone through, and then they try to imagine where they could like to be. It's also very helpful. These techniques are tailored again to fit the individual needs client. So you don't just use all the theories. It depends the issue the client is going to present to you. And by the way, you can use one technique and it brings out a very huge impact on this client. It is going to help them to achieve better mental health and their well-being. Yes. Before we go to the human life development, any question up to there? Any question up to there? So these techniques, there are many, and that is why I use that when you are just dealing with the employees at the workplace, borrow from any of the theories you've come across. You borrow from all the theories which you have come across. So the human lifespan development, it's also a scientific study of how people change and remain the same throughout their lives, from the conception to death. And remember, as I said, from 0 to whatever age, even over 100 years, you're still developing. So you find that this field is typically divided into maybe 3 main domains. We have the physical development. The physical development, when we are talking about this includes maybe the changes in our bodies, how people start maturing to start thinking, their brain matures, how their sensory capacities, what they are seeing. Now it starts developing the motor skills and healthy. And some of the examples is we are talking about the physical development, and it encompasses from growth during childhood, puberty, aging process. So those are the physical developments we are talking about, even those physical changes in our bodies, which we see. Then the other domain, which we also need to look at, is the cognitive development, which again is under the brain, but cognitive. Now, when you start in developing those or involving those changes in thinking, you can think, you can be able to remember, that is memory. You can be able even to sort out a problem solving. You know, problem solving is also another strategy on how you need to understand those other
Mwalimu, we can't hear you.
Mwalimu, you're lost. We can't hear.
Competent child or children who can be able to think and reason like adults. So when you have such like children, you don't go disclosing the information when they come to you, because when their IQ is so high, you keep it. But if you feel like they need that support, then you can be able to assist these children. Then we have the psychosocial development. And this domain covers changes, which we talk about the emotions, the personality, social relationships. These are development, because once now...
Excuse me, Maureen. Excuse me,
Sorry?
please.
Yes.
You are totally lost. At the start, you got lost, you could not hear anything. So you have to, human lifespan. For some time, we could not hear you.
Wow. Thank you for that. I didn't know. And that is, thank you for letting me know. So which one? Let me go back. Here? Is that where you are talking about?
Yes, human lifespan development.
The whole of it?
From B.
From B, eh? Okay, asante. Technology, and thank you for bringing that into my awareness. Cognitive development is whereby we talked about, as the human beings continue developing, even the way of thinking changes. Whatever comes about the memory they have, they can be able to retain that information. And remember, we said it can either be in short-term sensory memory or long-term. So they can be able even to sit down and sort out their own issue, because here cognitively they have started to develop, and other intellectual skills. And this is why I was talking about, there are some children who are children, but when they are talking, their IQ is very high. And this is where we say, there's one psychologist who called them the competent guilt child. These children, when they come to a session, not that you need to be disclosing all their information. It depends. How competent are they? How intellectual are they? How is their IQ? And this one continue developing. So this is where we say that this development is there. And when we are also dealing with this development, we have the psychosocial development, which we talked about. This, it covers changes on emotions, the personality, social relationships, which includes, by the way, how a child, maybe the development from the attachment in infancy, identity formation, because when you are an infant, there's that attachment which you have. Then when you are having that identity formation, it's like you really want to know, who are you? What are you supposed to be doing? What is the right thing for you to do? What are you not supposed to do? This is where mostly we have what we call the identity crisis. When you have your own values, and those adolescents, they have their own values. So they really don't know when you're telling them that you're not supposed to be doing this and you are doing it. And this, it changes with the social roles. Because when we talk about the social roles, yes, I'm an adolescent. What am I supposed to do? What am I allowed to do? Because I'm being told, don't do this, this is for men, this is for what? But we want to know what I'm supposed to be doing. And this is where you find mostly some people have some conflict here with the adolescents as they are developing. That is the psychosocial stages of development, whereby we have one psychologist who is called Erik Erikson. He talks so much and so well about the psychosocial stages of development, where we are having this identity formation, identity crisis. There's this role, people have their values and you want them to have yours. And we also have another one we call the psychosexual stages of development, which is for Sigmund Freud, where we also talk about those stages of development and how at times some people can get stagnated, they can get stuck to that stage and they cannot be able to move on. So mtu wako how many years, but still they got stuck on that stage. Now when they're adults, it makes them to behave the way they're behaving. So this developmental psychology study, they study these changes to understand how and why people grow and adapt to different stages of life. Like now, there are some people who are perfectionists. There are some people maybe who are, how do I say, who are so disorganized. There are some people who like talking so much. There are some people who can be independent to make their decisions, depending, are you borrowing from psychosexual stages of development or some from psychosocial stages of development? So they also examine the influence of genetics, the environment, the culture, individual experiences on this development, because there are so many other things which make people to behave the way they are behaving, whereby us as human beings, we need to be open. We accept the people the way they are so that we get to know where are they coming from, what is making them to behave the way they are behaving. So we don't just make a conclusion. We don't just make a conclusion. Then let's look at the counseling specific, like a counseling specific client group, counseling specific client groups. Like when we are counseling clients, remember we are dealing with people from different perspectives. So counseling specific client groups, which involves you tailoring those therapeutic approaches, as I said, you have to make it to meet the unique group needs or your target group of different population. And here are some of the examples of those client groups, which we need to use when corresponding to these counseling techniques. And this is where I said, once you learn these skills and you grasp them, and you are told maybe you give a talk to a certain group of people, it's you to know what is your target group. What is their objective? What is their goal? What is their expectation? Then you make it towards that end. And especially when you're dealing with the children and adolescents, and you are supposed to help these children, or you are supposed to counsel these children, or the group. And by the way, when you're dealing with a group in counseling, you have to, these groups, they have to be in a way that the presenting issue has to be similar. Despite that underlying issues are different, but whatever up here, they are like this group, ni wale latecomers to work, or this group ni and performers, or this group ni wale wame and a colleague, maybe they have undergone loss and grief. So you put the people who are sharing a similar presentation. That's how you deal with a group. And when you are dealing with a group, we say group members, they need to be at least not less than 8. Why? If you have few members, in counseling, it's more of experiential sharing than maybe giving notes. So you need to learn experience from the others, so they should not be too few. Then you should not have more than 15 members in a group. We need a maximum of 12 to 15. And again, you need not to have so many, because if you have many participants, they might not have enough time, each one of them, to share, because every person who is in that group has to share. And when you are dealing with a group, it takes 2 to 2.5 hours when you're having that group counseling. I'm just giving an overview if you have to have a group therapy. Like there are some organizations which wants us to go and talk to them. They want us, we have like 50. No, what we usually say is like, what we want to say here is like, in those 50 or 40, can we have 2 groups also, or we have 3 groups, so that we can be able to reach every member in that group, and every member can have a chance so that they can be able to talk. So that is how we form groups for therapy. And let's say you are dealing with the children or adolescents, the techniques often includes play therapy, especially when we are, I don't know, there are some of the activities we do, like there's one we call the My Shield. And in My Shield, they are adults. We are adults, and we usually ask them to come up with a shield. They draw the shield. That's something which protects them. And in the components in that shield, they have to put them in a drawing. Who is your most important person? Chora. What do you fear? Chora. What is your ambition? You draw. What is maybe your achievement? You put it in a drawing and you pick maybe one. But that is because of time. But here, if someone has time for that one and you want to do art therapy, no, that is art therapy. They can be able to draw and then they share about it. They talk because they can draw and you don't understand what they have drawn. Play therapy, you give them the toys as they are playing. You can ask them, especially the children. Utakuja upate wameichora-chora, wamepaka rangi kwa macho, wametoboa. Now you try to ask them. Then from there they will tell you this person is bad, so and so is bad. He was doing this. You know, children also know, and they can be able to let you. They explain to you. Then we have that cognitive behavioral therapy, which you have been talking about. You address the issues like anxiety, the depression, the behavioral problems. So you get to understand that. So when you're dealing with that level, give them their space, let them explain to you what they are going through, even what they're not able to do, like even that art therapy, play therapy, let them explain to you and it makes you sense. Kuna wengine walipewa children, alitoboa na alikuwa amechora kama baba hivi, akachora alafu akatoboa kwa macho. And then he's like, this one is bad. He usually beats my mom. So he's explaining. So kuna hiyo abuse. So those are the things you need to put at the back of your mind. What group are you going to meet? When you have the couples and families, we have the family system therapy, which emotionally focuses on the emotional focused therapy, and they are commonly used to improve the communication problem. By the way, what makes most families or couples to have issues is the issue of communication. And this communication, tunakuanga na triangle. But now in these families, or where we don't have good communication, inakuwa na triangle, but it's not a complete one. So unatuma mtoto aongee na spouse arudishe huyu mtoto akuletee majibu. So this triangle inaendanga halfway. It's never complete. That's why if you want to improve on your communication, please let's not be sending people in between. Hata kama alafu kuna watu wanapendanga kuandika, alafu naekea mtu hapo. That one is not going to improve your communication. If possible, just try to talk. I know it's not easy, especially when you are so emotional. When you are calm, try in a small way just to talk where necessary. When someone talks to you, also respond. This is what is going to help the couples or the families to move on. Resolve the conflicts. And these conflicts, by the way, you need to go through the conflict management. The conflict management, it has its strategies on how you can be able to sort out these issues. Are you going to collaborate that you can be able to be as a spouse, as a couple, you sit down and you sort out your issues. You deal with the conflict. When conflicts cannot fail, conflicts are not bad. It's the same way when we say, you cannot say that stress is bad. Stress is not bad. It's good. It makes us it jokes our mind. The same way conflict is good, because when you have your opinion, another one has an opinion, then you sit together, you try to pick what can be able to work for both of you, then you can be able to move on. This is when we can be able to strengthen our relationship. And by the way, we have counselors who are specialists for children, who are specialists for adolescents, who can be able to do family and marriage therapy. And that is where they have specialized. Then we also have the elderly clients. And remember, elder clients, when you are counseling them, mainly you need to focus on the issues relating to aging. And some are grieving because of the aging. They are going through the loss. They have that life transition. It's not something easy. That is why some of us, we don't want to talk about our age. Oh my God, yani hivyo sasa nakufa. I'm already old. And that's why we comfort ourselves. Age is just a number. So here it's like you want us, maybe you let this person to look at life in a positive way. There are some people say, like when you look at the psychosocial stages of development, the one we have looked at by Erik Erikson, who says that when you reach the the last stage, the 8th stage, according to his stages, there are some people who are at that stage and they want to die peacefully. They look back and they see they have done what was expected of them. They have lived their life to the fullest. They appreciate what they've been able to do. And there are some of us who are lamenting, nilisomesha, wakunisaidia, hawakufaulu, hawakupata, sikufanya hii. You die with that guiltiness throughout the rest of your life. So you die a miserable death. Can you be able to know how to deal with yourself with that age in which you are, and you accept yourself and you say, there are so many who wanted to be your age, but they have not reached there. It's also an issue. Then we have the LGBTQT clients. This one's in the sasa wale wameingia. How do you need to handle them because of their gender affirming issues approach? So here you are supposed to support these clients. And I told you, not necessarily that you must have gone through all these issues so that you can be able to assist these clients. You tailor-make. You remember the theories which you have looked at, the interventions which you have looked at, the skills which you have looked at, those are the ones you just apply wherever you are so that you don't discriminate them. You don't label them. If you start showing that you are discriminating me or you're not respecting me, then you're going to make me not even to listen to you so that you can be able to make, because it's a choice they have made. If they are comfortable in that, work with them. If they are respecting, they have their beliefs and values, you work with them. Then we have the substance abuse clients, and these are like the other issues. And remember, like the adolescents, most of them, they have engaged into drug abuse. They're using these substances. Kuna bang, kuna miraha, kuna pombe. There are so many things which they are using. Eh? So you have to use that motivational interviewing so that they feel like they're not rejected, they're not maybe, how do I say, judged, they're not condemned. Eh? And remember, a person who is using substances, there's what we call the wheel of change. Unless a client is willing to change, there's not much you can be able to do with this client. So deal with those clients, just make them to have, there's what we call the wheel of change. And this wheel of change, there's that client who is contemplating that they want to come out of this substance. And they feel like they want to try, but because of their peers, they are not able. Until he steps on this wheel of change, where he starts contemplating, then he goes through until the relapsing stage. You encourage them. That's why we tell the clients, as long as someone relapses, that is not the end. Wacha kumwambia, at you have started, you want to come out of that substance. Nimekupatia wiki moja, not even wiki moja, just a few days. Then you're not supporting. A person can relapse more than 7 times before they stand on their feet. So you use that motivational interviewing and relapse prevention strategies, how they can be helped not to relapse. The key techniques to help these clients to overcome their addiction and maintain sobriety. So that's why we say when you enter on that wheel of change, then they start contemplating, they maintain the changes they want to do, they take the action, and you find mostly they start relapsing. If there's no problem when a client relapses, encourage them that is not all. Unaanguka na unasimama na utaendelea. And trauma survivors, if some clients have gone through a traumatic event, like now we are having the GNCs, and maybe the child goes for the protests, and in the process, this child dies, and this is what you've been observing. No one was expecting that. That is something which is so traumatic. Or maybe someone got shot, or someone broke one of the parts of their bodies. So they're survivors because that is what was aimed at. So those survivors, and that is why we say when people have gone through trauma, they have been traumatized, they need to be taken through the debriefing. So the trauma-focused cognitive therapy, where you can use what we call the eye movement desensitization, IMDR reprocessing, whereby you let that client who was involved, I'm just using the one like for the protesters, the one who survived, maybe he was shot and he survived. He saw how a friend was shot next to him or her and died. So you just tell them to close the eyes and to narrate to you what he saw, what he had, what exactly happened. You know, that one is so scaring. It is causing a lot of anxiety, that fear. So you let them just to talk about it. It's not easy. It is so traumatizing. By the way, when you are helping them so that they can be able to vent out that by them using the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. So this is also an effective way of helping clients process and heal from those traumatic experiences. And people have those traumatic experiences. And that is why they need, after a person has gone through that traumatic experience, we need to have what we call psychological debriefing, so that they can be able to share those traumatic experiences which they went through. And this one, it elicits those emotional feelings, but it is a healing in itself, and we call it a first aid. So each client group requires an nuanced approach to ensure that the counseling is effective and culturally sensitive. Okay. So those are some of the counseling specific groups. You tailor make it to suit the client whom you want to approach. We have two more. I'll go faster. We have like less than almost 30 minutes. Let's see what we can be able to do. This one, counseling, it is so much because it's not supposed to be one-sided, whereby one person talks throughout, but we want whereby we all participate. You give your experience, I give my experience, what I've also learned, what I've picked, what I've seen, what I've heard, so that we bring it together, so that when now next time you're getting such like groups, you know how to handle them. Then here we have the multicultural issues in counseling. Multicultural issues in counseling. And this is why we say in counseling, we need to involve and understand how we need to address the diverse cultural backgrounds. Remember, we are dealing with clients from different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and they have different experiences which these clients are going through. Like, in fact, there's a time we went for a training in Northeastern, and as the groups we are dealing with, one lady just shared and said, in our culture, we have two beds in the spouse. They don't sleep on the same bed. I don't know whether it's true or not, but they have two separate beds. So anytime the man needs the lady, he'll just bang, atakonga kwa mguu ya kitanda, kaka. So the lady ni ule mbio mpaka kwa ile kitanda. So you don't say, no, how can he do that? It's not good. According to, if that is their culture, work with it and accept it. That is how they have been copying, and that is how they have been brought up. So when we are dealing with clients, remember they are from multicultural differences. And that is why we say, whether you are practicing in Africa or in Western countries, as long as you are able to deal with the multicultural issues, you can address clients anywhere. You respect them, you respect their cultures, then you can be able to move on. Like, some of the key aspects here when you're dealing with the multicultural issues in counseling, you look at the cultural competence. Like counselors here, you must develop that cultural competence. That involves being aware of their own cultural bias, whether there's that biasness. You understand their cultural background of your client. And by the way, you need not even to know. As they are talking in that session, you'll get to know that whatever they're saying 1, 2, 3. And you try to adapt their the counseling techniques accordingly. So you work, remember we said in counseling is your client is the one who is an expert. Yours is to follow. So you don't come in with your own opinions. That's why we say we are not here to give our own opinions or to give our own suggestions or to discuss. Let the client lead and yours is to follow, because your client knows better what can be able to suit them. And that is why we always need to respect the culture of different communities. Then we have the language barrier. This is also another issue in counseling. The effective communication is crucial. And that is why we said when we have acquired those counseling skills, they're going to make us to communicate effectively with our clients. But here we are saying that the communication skills is very crucial. The language differences also can bother and create that barrier. By the way, we also ask, what is this which can bring a barrier or cause a barrier in communication? The language is there. So counselors need to use interpreters or someone who is going to interpret for you and learn the key phrases in their client's language. And this is where we say, if you have a client who speaks even in your mother tongue, and that one can be able maybe to be heard well, do it. Unaweza fanya kwa language yako, you can do it in Kiswahili, as long as you can be able to reduce this barrier. It comes well if you can be able to do it in the people you can be able to interpret, to communicate fluently. Then when you have an interpreter, and we usually say that when you have an interpreter, once information is passed from one person to another, it gets contaminated. It's like it really doesn't maintain what exactly you wanted to say. But if need be, you can be able to use one. Something else is cultural sensitivity. So us as counselors or you as helpers, you should be sensitive to cultural norms and values that may influence a client's behavior and their attitude. By the way, even the way someone is talking and you're like, those facial expressions, the way you are using your facial expressions, unakunja, unafungua macho, alama ya mshangao, please, let's be very, very sensitive when we are dealing with our clients. Let's respect their attitudes and the client's behavior so that we don't affect these clients. This including understanding the cultural views on mental health issues, family dynamics, social roles which they play, because there are some cultures. The ladies are the ones who are seriously constructing. Na wanaume wamekaa tu, so usianze kusema, what is this? I build and it comes to my house. Where? You have to respect that, because that is how they have been brought up. That is what they know. So be very sensitive. Even them when they come, they find that they are the men who are constructing in a sisi tumeka wanashanga. So can you be able to respect that? And remember families have dynamics. Can you be able to respect them? You work with them the way they are. Those mental health issues, there's some families don't want to talk about the mental issues because they believe like a mental issue is a curse. And once you have a person who has a mental issue, no one should talk about it. But here we need to give that information. We need to communicate to them. We need to teach them. This is now where we give information as counselors. Discrimination and biasness. At times, clients maybe from the minority groups may face discrimination and biasness. And this is when we are dealing with those groups which feel like the people who have disability, the people who have been sexually abused, we have the minors, we have the women, we have those people who are disadvantaged. So which can impact on their mental health. So they feel like, sisi hakuna watu wanatujali, no one is there for us. So we should not discriminate a client, because I saw in one of the exams they were asking, which are some of the barriers to the people who are disadvantaged. When there's that discrimination, when there's that biasness, it doesn't matter. The client you're dealing with, as long as he or she is a human being, treat all clients equally. So you need to be aware of these issues, provide support to help the clients navigate through these challenges. because he's a human being. He needs to be listened to. He needs you to be closer to them. He needs you to create that relationship. So it should not be like, because for them they are disadvantaged, you're going to discriminate them or you're going to be biased with them. Just treat them equally like another human being. Inclusive practice. This is implementing inclusive practices such as using culturally relevant examples and materials can help clients feel understood and respected. And that is why you need to give them their space. Let me understand how you do this. What is the repercussion of doing this? If someone is not doing this, you know, you are like making them to appreciate themselves, and they become aware of what they are doing. And by addressing these multicultural issues, counselors can provide more effective and empathetic support to their clients, so that they also see that they are valued. They are people who are recognized, they are appreciated, than us showing that how these people cannot be treated like any other group of people. Lastly, any question up to there before we continue? Before I talk about the ethical issues, any question up to there? Any question up to there?
Maybe I could ask,
Mm-hmm.
just a quick one. Maybe you'll tell us at some point, how do you know you're successful? Or how do you measure success as a counselor? After you put in all these efforts, when do you know to let go or that you're successful? Thank you.
Okay. How do you get to know that you are successful in what you're doing?
Yeah.
And by the way,
when to let go.
Or when?
When to let go, maybe. Sometimes you say, this one now, just let go.
Let go means you want to terminate the session with this client?
Yes. Yes, the sessions, yeah.
Yes.
Or to hand over.
Yes. I think at a certain point, we are going to look at some of that, but we say, how will you know that this is a time now you need to terminate a session? I don't know whether we have done it or we do it later. If you have met your objective, if the client feels like maybe they're okay, and even you can terminate a session if a client fails to continue to come to a session. And that's why I told you, if a client doesn't come back, please don't ask them when you meet them. Salimiana ni kama mjawahi onana, ndio mara ya kwanza mumeonana. Or even if mumeonana, amjawahi kuwa na session now. So, and again, when you're going to conclude your session, you can also be able, remember we are using the scaling. If, when they're gauging themselves, where can they rate themselves? Wamefika level gani? Is there anything, or what have you learned from this session? Is there anything you're picking from this session? By the way, it makes you to understand that this person is picking something. You know, when you're asking them now, this is our third session, I'm not sure what maybe you have picked from the previous sessions. Or now we are almost going to terminate the session. What have you benefited? What have you gained? Is there anything you have learned from this session which is going to help you? They can say one, and some can even say 5 of them. And even you will be observing, you as a helper, you saw how this client, when they came in, how they were. And as you're also, remember, you continue, the assessment is continuous. You continue assessing your clients on their behavior, how they're acting, on their emotions, how they're able to express themselves. You know, it keeps on. It's like now, when they come, most of them, they are so closed. They don't want to talk. They don't want to open up. But as you move on in the session, itafika mahali, now they'll be talking freely. They can question themselves, their behaviors freely. They can be able to see that here, they need to talk about it. Then from there, you're also observing that your client is heading somewhere. Another concern? Okay, let's look at the last outline, which is of ethical and professional issues in counseling. Ethical and professional issues in counseling. By the way, what's ethics? What's ethics? What is ethics? What is ethics? I know you have ethical standards in whatever you are doing. So what is this ethics? We have very few minutes. What is ethics? Ethics?
Moral values.
Moral values, yes. Ethics, thank you. Ethics is what guides us, or it gives us the moral standards, or it gives us the framework within which they operate, or it lets us know what is right or wrong, or what is bad or good when we are dealing with our clients. So it gives us a framework within which to operate so that we know we are guided by that, so that you don't go against those ethical standards. So ethical and professional issues in counseling are also critical, ensuring that clients receive that the clients receive that safe or effective or respectful care. And that is why we say you have that framework. You know that your client's supposed to be safe, your client needs to be respected, and whatever you are doing, it has to be effective. And here are some few considerations when we are talking about ethics. What is this which is going to give us a guideline? What are some of these principles which we need, the professional ways we need to conduct ourselves so that we can be able to make the clients feel like they are safe wherever they are? One of them, and we have talked about ethical, we are just mentioning because we like talking about what is ethics, what is supposed to be done, what is this which is not supposed to be done. And we also look at the principles and the ethics, which guide us. By the way, it gives us a framework. But generally, the key areas we need to consider is about the issue of confidentiality. And I've kept on talking about this issue of confidentiality, whereby we have to maintain confidentiality is very, very critical. And I said this, even at our workplaces, those people you are working with, those colleagues you are with, people have issues. If they're just given a conducive environment and a person they're going to trust that whatever they're going to share is not going to be disclosed to any other person, this private information is going to be protected, is when you come to know that people need counseling. And you know, people have an attitude. Counseling is for the people who have mental illness. But let me tell you, even if you don't have an issue, just to go there. Issues, just something small, you take it there. It's when you go to your real issues. So confidentiality is very important. And we said when we are giving this confidentiality, it's not absolute confidentiality. We give it a limit, whereby if you're intending to harm self or to harm other people, you're sitaweka. So they need to be told that. The other key consideration here under the ethical issues and professional counseling, we say informed consent. We usually say, yes, you have the confidentiality, but there has to be that informed consent when maybe when you need to disclose this information. So clients should be fully informed about the counseling process, what it entails, including their potential risks and benefits, like what you're talking about under confidentiality. This ensures that they can make acknowledgeable decisions about their treatment. If they feel like whatever you are telling them maybe is not going to work, that I'm telling you about the issue of confidentiality, that whatever you're going to share here is going to remain confidential, unless if you're intending to harm yourself, then I'll not keep it. Or there's some information also might be shared with other people if you're going to harm others. Or maybe the court of law might need some of the information if need be. If they feel like that one cannot work for them and they're not going to give that informed consent, then they can also be aware about it. They can either continue or not continue. When we talk about the issue of dual relationship and boundaries, and this is what someone asked in the first session, in the first module, about you being HR, and here you are practicing as counselors. So where are these boundaries? So this dual relationship is like, you are an HR, you are a counselor. So when a client comes to you, unatoa ile kofia ya HR, unaweka ya counselor. So what is this? How is a client supposed to be helped here? And you as an individual, how is this going to work? So counselors must avoid the dual relationships. Like now, as much as I'm a counselor, there's no way I will ever counsel my husband. So am I counseling him as my husband? Or am I counseling him as the father of my children? Or how am I looking at him at that time? So I'm looking at him as a husband or as a father of my children. Yes, inakuwa ni shida, or even I cannot counsel my children. These are my children. How can I be able to counsel them? But what are you sure? Maybe what we can do is to apply those counseling skills, but not really professionally sitting to counsel the person. Even my friend, I cannot be able to counsel them. Why? You cannot be able to challenge them. You cannot be able to confront them. You cannot be able to bring maybe different perspectives to their lives, because already they know you and you also know them. So you should avoid this. And this one is going to impair that professional judgment and exploit clients. So this including maintaining that clear boundaries, so that you can be able to prevent that conflict of interest. So if you have another relationship, by the way, when someone knows you know them, already you have their pre-information, it doesn't come out well. That is why even you at your workplaces, you can, yes, as HR, you can use the counseling skills wherever you are, but you need to source someone who is not from that organization, who is not aware about the culture of that organization, but who comes to listen to the issues of the employees, then they talk to them. You might see it is something small, but you don't know the impact you'll have in some of their lives. Even if you touch one soul, you've already helped. Then those professional competencies, counselors must continuously update their skills. You need always to be on toes. Like what you're doing here is, this is knowledge you're getting. Maybe someone said in the morning, one of the expectations is to learn something new. I don't know by the end of it tomorrow evening, whether they could have learned anything. I don't know whether they could have learned anything by tomorrow evening. So we need always to continue. That's what we say, re-engineering our skills and knowledge to provide the best possible care. And this including seeking supervision. And that is why I told you we have therapy, we have supervision. Therapy is when you go for your personal issues, which you feel like you have a challenge and you need to be aware, you see how to address those issues. But when you're going for supervision, once you have counseled clients, at times we get stuck, and sometimes we get burnouts, you can go for this supervision so that if you are stuck with a client issue, by the way, you can be stuck. Ujui mahali ya kuenda. Then from there now, from that, the supervisors, who is a group of supervisors who come together, and then they try to assist you to come up or to handle those issues. So that is supervision, where you are stuck, they can unstuck you, they tell you do this, go and approach this, by you telling them what you did, and at the same time, you maintain the identity of your client. Then we have the ethical decision-making. By the way, when you have these ethics, they give us some framework within which we need to make the decisions. So this ethical decision-making, counselors often face complex ethical dilemma. There are so many dilemmas. When making decision, model can help navigate these challenges and ensure that decisions are made in the best interest of your client. Anything you are doing in counseling, it is the client to benefit. Beneficence, that is one of the principles under the ethics, whereby it is the client to benefit. You are doing it for the goodness of this client, is not for your own reason. Okay. Then we have the therapist self-care. Yeah. As therapists, you as counselors, you therapists, you know, are counselors. You as helpers, the one who wants to provide this helping service, you need to take care of yourself to provide effective care, counselors must also take care of their own mental and emotional well-being. You have to take care of yourself. And this one is going to prevent us from getting those burnout. Burnout ni ile unafanya kazi mingi and there's no break, which ensures that they can be able to remain fully present for their clients. So please, always self-care. Fanya ka exercise, maintain yourself, treat yourself well. And by the way, if I ask you people, when did you ever treat yourself? Wanasemanga, you spoil yourself. When did you ever spoil yourself? When did you say, sasa, ni wewe na wewe mwenyewe, you have worked so hard that you want to treat yourself? We're going to say, well, na hii economy, take care of yourself, treat yourself. Buy gifts for yourselves. We like buying gifts for other people. Na sisi hata tujawahi jinunulia. Lastly, legal considerations. Counselors must be aware of their compliance with relevant laws and regulations that affect their practice. This includes understanding mandatory reporting requirements and maintaining appropriate licensure. This is where we say you need to be registered when practicing. You need to be aware that you need not to harm your clients. We always say that the court of law can also be able to call you or summon you so that you can be able to give some other evidences if they will be relevant in the cases which will be in the court of law. So addressing these ethical and professional issues is essential for maintaining the integrity of the counseling profession and also ensuring that the clients receive the highest standard of care so that we don't make our clients to feel worse than before. That is the end of today's presentation. End question. I know I've gone marathon, nikuguzia too, because even when we are talking about these ethical issues, there are some we say that a client has that autonomy. They can make a decision. You need not to control them. A client, you have to have that justice, that you treat them with that fairness. A client needs to be, there's that non-malfeasance. You need not to harm your clients or to make them to feel worse than when they came to see you. I don't know whether I've made you to feel worse since morning than when you came in. I hope there's something which you have learned. There's that beneficence is the client who is supposed to benefit from this. And then we have that, the other one is fidelity, whereby once a client has come to you, you have given them those promises, you need to keep them and maintain them. If you have talked about confidentiality, can you be able to keep that confidentiality of your client? There are many things, but here we are just touching. Thank you. And if you have any question, any input before we close today's session, or how the session has been, or what you feel like needs to be addressed when we are going to our second and third and fourth module tomorrow. Okay. Any comment, any input? Yes, Karemi. Anyone who wants to say something before we conclude today's session? And remember, this is something which takes out like a whole day, but we're taking like just 2 sessions, 2 hours or something, or 3 hours or something like that. Anything? Anyone who wants to talk before we conclude? Karemi is saying thank you. It has been, let me go to the chat. Karemi says thank you. It has been a awesome session. Thank you, Karemi. Lucy says thank you for the informative sessions. Very lively indeed. Karibu sana. I wish we had time. You can open up. You can share. I can share my experience. You share your experience. We integrate them. Then we move forward. Rose is saying thank you. I've learned a lot. Karibu sana, Rose. Evelyn, appreciating your delivery mode. Paul, thanks, both learned something and also refreshed on some past learnings. Thank you, Paul. Raphael, very interactive and educative. Toby, much obliged. I have learned a lot. The delivery mode was great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. Looking forward to meet you tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Barikiwa and have a blessed evening. So tomorrow we have one at 9 to 12 and the last one from 1 to 4. Thank you so much. And thank you also for having had an opportunity to join this training. God bless you.